Those of you who are veteran followers of VisualPolitik already know that on this channel, we take some traditions seriously. One of them is precisely the VisualPolitik Awards for the most outstanding political protagonists of the year. Well, this time, we want to start a new tradition, the VisualPolitik Anti-Awards. That is, from now on, VisualPolitik Santa will deliver giant lumps of coal to the politicians who have disappointed us the most in the year that is drawing to a close, but not necessarily to the worst politicians of the year. So, don't be surprised if this list does not include Kim Jong-un, Nicolas Maduro, or any other tyrant. Of course, all these characters deserve every condemnation there is, but let's be honest, none of them can disappoint us because we did not expect anything good from them anyway. The VisualPolitik Anti-Awards are aimed at those politicians from whom we expected something good and who have ended up disappointing us. And believe me, this election has not been easy. Given the way things are, while in 2020 we were afraid that the world political landscape would deteriorate into 1984, this year it seems we have ended up living in a season of the TV show Big Brother. You may have already forgotten, but 2021 kicked off with Donald Trump's assault on Capitol Hill, which resembled an episode of Black Mirror written by the writers of The Office. We also saw how the dictator of Belarus, Alexander Lukashenko, used Syrian refugees as a political weapon, in a political episode so absurd that it seemed like a comedy, if not for the fact that it was real. All over the world, we have seen how it's become increasingly difficult for politicians to agree on forming a government. In other words, this year there is very little reason for optimism. And these are not empty words. You know that on VisualPolitik we always like to look on the bright side of things. If we have to applaud a politician or a government, we do so unreservedly. But with things as they are, it's kind of been a struggle this year to tell good news. So, to come up with a list with only 3 bad politicians has been mission impossible. But traditions are traditions, even new ones. So let's get started with the annual VisualPolitik Anti-Awards. Let's get cracking. VisualPolitik Anti-Award 2021, Joe Biden. On the 20th of January, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr., better known as Joe Biden, was sworn in as the president. He became the 46th president of the United States. He came to power primarily with one mission: to put an end to the conflictive political stage of the Trump era, to repair the international image of the United States, and to reunite American society. However, VisualPolitik viewers, since then, and despite the short time that has elapsed, the American president has made so many blunders and mistakes as to merit this anti-award of 2021. Joe. It really didn't take you all that long. In total, we can highlight 3 major failures or errors. And you know what? The first of them, I hardly think needs any explanation. Remember these almost Vietnam-esque images? Exactly. The exit from Afghanistan was a colossal disaster. Yes, it is true, you never lose a war in a joyful and festive way. Of course, the defeat had nothing to do with this particular president, but no one, absolutely no one could have imagined the chaos, pessimism, and lack of control that accompanied the withdrawal of US troops. Things went so wrong that for days, thousands of US soldiers were basically hostages of the Taliban themselves. The Taliban, by the way, were the ones who set the deadline for the US withdrawal. And not only that, after 20 years, the situation that the Americans have left in the country is terrible. Power in the hands of ultra-religious fanatics, millions of people dying of hunger, women once again turned into objects, and to top it all off, summary executions have returned. The United Nations itself has already attributed more than 100 executions of former collaborators and officials of the former US-backed Afghan government. UN sounds alarm over extrajudicial killings in the Taliban's Afghanistan. VisualPolitik fans, whichever way you look at it, the departure from Afghanistan was a real blow, a monumental blow. But that's not the end of it, because Afghanistan is not the only mistake made by the Biden administration. There is also what some are already beginning to know as Bidenflation. Yeah, that's right, Bidenflation. I didn't come up with that acronym. That wasn't me. We are talking about a huge discrepancy between the economic situation and the public policies promoted by this government. For example, in November, inflation in the United States reached its highest level in 40 years. Prices increased by 6.8% over the same period of the previous year. True, there are not yet Argentine numbers, but you will agree with me that we are talking about very, very high records. So the question is, what is Biden doing? Well, he's basically throwing more and more gasoline on the fire. Earlier this year, he signed the second 1.9 trillion coronavirus rescue package. In May, he presented the broad economic policy guidelines which, for example, envisage that the US public spending will increase by the beginning of the next decade to its highest level in terms of GDP since the Second World War. And the current budget for 2022 already includes spending increases in almost all items. Then, in mid-November, he signed a $1.2 trillion infrastructure program. And now he's pushing a $2 trillion welfare mega project. Spending, spending, and spending. In total, Biden expects the federal government's public debt to increase, hold on to your seat, by at least $17 trillion over the next 10 years. And why do we think this is bad? Well, think about it for a moment. You may like government spending stimulus more or even less than I do. But to go down this road when the economy is growing, there are millions of job openings and inflation is soaring. I don't know, it could almost be described as nonsense. Yet that's exactly what Biden and his team are doing. But be careful, because we're not only talking about public spending. With energy, for example, it's more or less the same story. Oil and gas prices have skyrocketed, and Biden is going crazy calling for OPEC to increase production. But meanwhile, what is he actually doing in the US? Well, exactly the opposite. Since Biden came to the White House, the government has suspended all new concessions to extract gas or oil from federal soil. Extractions in Northeast Alaska have been halted, and permits to build a pipeline with Alberta, Canada, to supply the United States with nearly 1 million barrels of oil per day have been revoked. And what can I say? It seems a bit hypocritical to punish oil on home soil and then demand that OPEC increase production. In the end, the result is more severe energy crisis, more expensive prices, and everyone suffers. Because yes, it's all very well to promote the energy transition and clean technologies, but there is no reason to do so by punishing the prosperity and welfare of families. Let alone punish everyone and then ask the Persian Gulf petromonarchies to come to the rescue and sell you as much oil as they can. It's hypocritical to say the least, don't you think? But wait a minute, because believe it or not, we're not done yet. As if that wasn't enough, now to top it all off, Biden and Trump look like the terrible twins of global protectionism. And why do I say this? Well, not only because the president has not reversed Trump's tariffs, but he has created some wars of his own. For example, he's resumed the lumber war with Canada by doubling tariffs. Nor does he seem to be in favor of bringing the country back into the CPTPP, the Pacific Trade Agreement that is all the rage, and to which countries such as the United Kingdom, China, and Taiwan have even asked to join. So for all these reasons, Joe Biden is one of our 3 VisualPolitik 2021 anti-award winners. Congratulations! Actually, I don't think congratulations is the word. So listen up, Mr. President. If you don't want to join the select club of the USA's worst presidents, you need to change course. But having said that, are you ready to meet our second award winner? Check this out. VisualPolitik Anti-Award 2021, Ursula von der Leyden. I know what you're wondering. What's Ursula von der Leyen's problem? We are talking about the President of the European Commission, nothing less than the European equivalent of Joe Biden. And how has she disappointed us so much that we should give her an anti-award? There are many reasons, but mainly one in particular, her economic policy that we could summarize in a couple of words: the money tap. You could say it is the opposite for everything we stand here on VisualPolitik. In other words, if von der Leyen's goal is to create a Europe where it is impossible for innovative companies to be born, where bureaucrats control in the entire economic fabric, and we end up with a new debt crisis, then von der Leyen is doing a great job. But since on VisualPolitik we stand for free, prosperous economies and fiscal responsibility, von der Leyen seems to us about as welcome as the boogeyman. And I know what some of you out there will say. Did you really expect anything else, Grant? If there is one thing that characterizes Brussels politicians, it is their unconditional love for regulations, bureaucracy, and taxes. Isn't it? Well, yes and no. Think about it. Von der Leyen is centre-right politician coming from Germany. If there is one thing that characterizes all German politicians, it is fiscal responsibility. That is, not spending more than they collect, thinking in the long term, and fighting corruption and waste. In other words, Germans have always been the biggest advocates of austerity. And that is one of the reasons why Germany became the economic locomotive it is today. Call us delusional, but that's exactly what we expected from someone like Ursula von der Leyen. What she has brought us, however, is this. EU leaders agree on €1.82 trillion budget and coronavirus recovery package. That's right, here we have the European money tap. And wait a minute, because on top of those €1.8 trillion, we need to add another 500 billion in aid to businesses. In total, Brussels is going to spend more than €2 trillion to recover from the coronavirus. It is such an astronomical figure that it is even scary to read it. So what is all this money going to be spent on? On paper, von der Leyen wants to transform the European economy into a green, sustainable, digital, dynamic, and 2.0 economy. So it would be logical to expect that all that public money would go to green energy products, electric cars, and the like. right? Well, yeah, that would kind of be expected if there was some kind of control by Brussels. But our good friend Ursula von der Leyden has decided to trust that the politicians of the member countries know how to manage the money responsibly. For example, in Spain, they have already decided to use part of the windfall on projects as green, sustainable, digital, dynamic, and 2.0 as this one.
The government of Spain will allocate $1 billion to rehabilitate public buildings.
Do you remember the monorail from The Simpsons? Well, right now, Europe is filling up with monorails. That is, projects that make no economic sense. In this case, did Spain really need to renovate its buildings so urgently? Is that really the best thing to do to fight climate change? Well, this is just one more example. There are also subsidies to produce TV series and a lot of other things. Von der Leyden's logic can be summed up in the phrase, shut up and take my money. It is wilder even than Biden's strategy. After all, the US is coming up with similar spending plans, but in this case, they do need infrastructure. In the case of Europe, we're talking about spending money just for the sake of it. But why are we opposed to this? Well, mainly for two reasons. First is that all this money does not go to the most innovative or efficient companies. It goes to the companies that are best connected with governments. That's to say, big companies. Europe will continue to lack innovative companies. The incentive now is not to create the next Google, but to comply with the specifications of a public tender to take advantage of the European money machine. The second is, what are the tax consequences of all this? We're not just talking about more taxes, we take that for granted. The biggest problem is that all this forces the European Central Bank to print more and more money, and that translates to inflation.
Inflation in Eurozone soars to 4.9%, highest since euro was introduced.
Yes, VisualPolitik fans, welcome to the years of inflation. In Europe and the United States, we have practically forgotten what inflation was. For the next few years, we are going to have to get used to losing purchasing power every month. Of course, the inflation we have suffered in 2021 can be explained by many other reasons, not only public spending. But it is to be expected that, if the direction is not changed, inflation will be here to stay. Let's be honest, Europe has been stagnant for decades. The biggest European companies are still the same today as they were 20 years ago. This is a problem. Nevertheless, we Europeans could boast of a very stable economy with no inflation. The former Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker was the classic moderate politician who hardly ever appeared in the media. He never approved any megalomaniacal measures, nor did he try to change the world with his checkbook. His successor, Ursula von der Leyden, is entering into a new economic logic that we don't like at all. So this year, 2021, she has undoubtedly earned the anti-award. But who will be our third award winner? Any guesses? Well, here we go.
VisualPolitik 2021 Anti-Award, AMLO.
Let's be honest, we didn't expect much from Andrés Manuel López Obrador, but still, AMLO has exceeded our already poor expectations. So the question is then, what on earth has AMLO done so that VisualPolitik, despite not expecting anything from him, has awarded him one of its anti-awards for 2021? Well, basically, it's because he hasn't done anything, or almost nothing right. Not even that with which he committed himself to and was supposed to be a priority. Whichever way we look at it, AMLO's results are a disaster, and any defense of him has more holes in it than the defense of Barcelona Football Club. That's a reference that was written for me, I don't understand football. Let's start, for example, with what is arguably the biggest problem in the United Mexican States. Mexico is experiencing a cartel war and a spiral of violence so great that it looks more like a Quentin Tarantino / Stanley Kubrick / Francis Ford Coppola co-production than a country. To give you an idea, the 6 most violent cities in the world, those with the most homicides per 100,000 inhabitants, are located squarely in Mexico. We are talking about Celaya, Tijuana, Juarez, and 3 others that I just don't want to pronounce because I don't want to annoy a bunch of murdery Mexicans. No offense to the non-murdery Mexicans.
Mexico has become the epicenter of homicidal violence worldwide. Jose Antonio Ortega, president of the Citizen Council for Public Security and Criminal Justice.
We are talking about a country with more than 25,000 murders and homicides every year. Of course, let's not kid ourselves, it's not all been AMLO's responsibility. Crime has been shaking Mexico on a large scale for at least 15 years. In fact, when he came to power, what he found was a broken country with more than 25,000 dead annually and almost 50,000 disappearances. But wait a minute, because it does not exempt him from all the blame. The thing that AMLO does need to accept responsibility for is that one of his great electoral promises was precisely to pacify the country. To this end, he implemented a new strategy, the policy of hugs, not bullets. Yeah, your ears don't deceive you. In fact, one of the first things this president did after winning the elections was to organize peace forums throughout the country. Something that, by the way, he ended up suspending due to protests from the victims of violence themselves. Since then, everything has been a back and forth without a clear idea, and the numbers have gone from bad to worse. During the first 30 months of the AMLO administration alone, more than 86,000 homicides were registered. A terrifying record that would make anyone's hair stand on end, if they had any. And no matter how much AMLO would like to deny it, it makes him the president of Mexico with the worst crime data.
This government will be remembered for not prosecuting criminals. Maria Elena Morena, director of Cosa en Común.
But take note, because crime is far from being the only weak point of this president. Another of AMLO's big promises was in regards to the energy sector, and particularly the oil sector. AMLO pledged to recover the glory days of Pemex, Mexico's historic state-owned oil company, a giant that in recent decades has gone from bad to worse. We are talking about a company that is up to its eyebrows in debt and producing less and less oil. But all that was going to change with Andrés Manuel López Obrador. Now, it's been 3 years since this president came to power, and the question is, do you think he's been successful with this venture? Okay, you know the likely answer, because after all, we are giving him an anti-award. So obviously, no. In fact, the results are going in exactly the opposite direction. Under AMLO's mandate, Pemex debt has broken all records, while crude oil production is going downhill and without any breaks. When AMLO came to power, the Mexican oil company produced 1.8 million barrels. Today, that figure is around 1.6 million, and everything points to the fact that things are not going to get any better. To make matters worse, the president is reversing Peña Nieto's opening up of the energy market, which is causing many private projects to cool down. So, as you can see, it seems that we are facing yet another failure. But do you think we're done? Well, you are very wrong, because we can also talk about, you guessed it, the management of the pandemic. You see, Mexico is a relatively young country. Only 7% of the population is over 65 years old. And as you all know, the elderly are precisely the most vulnerable to the coronavirus. In spite of this, Mexico has recorded the 5th highest number of deaths by COVID-19 in the world. Yes, okay, I know, in relative terms, there are countries that have done even worse. But Mexico is still at the bottom, and its figures are much, much worse than the average of similar countries in terms of income. Then, despite having received a huge boost from the trade war between China and the United States that has made Mexico a very attractive place for many large multinationals, and despite the record remittances that are coming into the country, the economy is also not rocketing, and the post-pandemic recovery has been much, much slower than expected. Something for which, by the way, the anti-capitalist profile of this president, well, it kind of doesn't help, I don't think. And you know what? All these failures we have seen cause the number of people in poverty and extreme poverty to increase since AMLO took power. So, another great unfulfilled promise. Still, don't think for a moment that this is an easy recognition. Surprising as it may seem, and in spite of everything we have seen, the polls still say that AMLO is quite popular. Check this out.
AMLO reaches 62% approval rating in his 3rd year as president. Encol poll.
So what do you want me to tell you? We are on VisualPolitik, and if there is one thing we like, it is to be independent. So, dear Mr. President of the United Mexican States, this 2021 Anti-Award is for you. And here you have our anti-awards. I know, after this list, many of you will have a lingering bad taste in your mouth. But no matter how many headaches politics may bring us, life is much more than that. And right now, you are likely to be spending a few days with your loved ones. At the end of the day, that is the most important thing. Enjoying time with the people you care about and trying as best we can to be happy. My best wishes to all of you. From the entire VisualPolitik team, we would like to wish you a happy year in 2022. And, as always, don't forget that on this channel, we release new videos every week. So subscribe to VisualPolitik and hit the little bell down there so you don't miss any of our updates. If you liked this video, like it so we know, and I'll see you next year.